Welcome to the Future 42 and thank you for taking the time to visit our channel. We pray that you receive this knowledge with an open heart and mind. This video focuses on the 5 core features of Robert Kiyosaki's profound book Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. This is the third book that we are sharing from Robert's catalog, and it's the third book in the Rich Dad series. This series has been requested by popular demand, so we promise that you will enjoy this video as much as the previous videos. If you are new to our channel, then welcome. Be sure to hit the subscribe button below and don't forget the notification bell so that you receive this knowledge as soon as we post it. Now let's dive into the lesson. The text places us on a beach with 12-year-old Robert walking alongside his rich dad, as they typically tend to do from time to time. This time was different. This time, the lesson was as big as the ocean. Pointing at a large house by the shore, Rich Dad said,
"You see that large house over there? I just purchased it."
Dumbfounded by the remarkable beauty of the property, Robert smiled with pride, but deep down inside he was confused as to how exactly Rich Dad could afford that seemingly very expensive piece of real estate. You see, at this time in their lives, Rich Dad wasn't rich yet, at least not from a financial perspective. Robert probed as to how this purchase was possible and what was done to make such a lavish investment. Rich Dad responded,
"I personally could not afford to make this purchase, however, my company was in the perfect position to buy it."
The philosophy depicted in this book originates from Robert's Rich Dad and was made practical by Robert with Rich Dad's guidance. Using these same principles, Robert has been able to build significant wealth and has been sharing his knowledge with us for years now. Let's examine the core features of this strategy and see if we can replicate the method. Core feature 1. Create assets that buy assets. Robert's real dad had a great job with a substantially higher wage than Robert's rich dad. Yet, Robert knew that his dad could never afford to purchase that beach house. Clearly baffled and slightly disoriented by this, he asked Rich Dad to explain what he was missing. To clear up the confusion, Rich Dad explained that Robert's real dad had spent his life working hard for money that created someone else's wealth, while Rich Dad himself had worked years at creating his own wealth in his own company. This is an example of wealth building versus income. Wealth can be produced through the creation of your own assets. While being paid by the hour or on a salary will most likely not make you rich and just keep you employed. Warren Buffett said it best: if you don't find a way to make money while you're sleeping, you will work until you die. Once you have successfully created an asset that delivers a positive cash flow, you should always aim to invest in assets that strengthen your cash flow and use the surpluses to acquire additional assets. This cycle can be repeated indefinitely, and if executed in the correct manner, you will experience a compounding effect. One of the main reasons to invest using the cash flow from your assets in a business as compared to your paycheck is that the cash flow can be spent as gross income. This is because it hasn't been paid out by the parent company to any individual yet. Rich Dad got to buy assets with this gross income through his company and paid taxes on the remaining net income, while Robert's real dad paid taxes on gross income and then tried to buy assets with his net income. Safety and protection are also a major consideration when deciding how to make purchases. Owning and operating assets always carry some level of risk. These risks are essentially the same no matter if you operate the assets as an individual or through a corporation. However, a corporate veil does offer a layer of protection for individuals covered by it rather than being exposed directly through your own efforts. Core feature 2. Use debt as a tool. There are many contradicting opinions surrounding debt and the role it should play in your life. On one hand, debt is considered bad, dangerous, and something that should be avoided at all costs. On the other hand, it is viewed as a tool, something that can help you speed up your process to acquire great wealth. According to Robert Kiyosaki, bad debt does exist, and that needs to be acknowledged. However, there is also good debt, and with the right utilization can be the ultimate tool to your wealth. The difference lies in what the debt is used for and how it affects your cash flow. Let's pick apart bad debt for a minute. As people in the middle class climb up the corporate ladder, they start to earn more money. This also qualifies them to take on more debt. This debt is often used to buy a home, an expensive car, a new wardrobe, etc. This debt is considered as bad debt because it weakens their cash flow and only makes them even more dependent on their next paycheck. As time progresses, using this type of debt becomes a death trap to anyone aiming at building wealth, as this behavior of spending cash and using debt to finance new fancy things is addictive by nature. As the income continues to increase, so does their bad personal debt, and it all continues in a vicious spiral. Good debt, however, has greater positive presence and allows you to manifest even better opportunities and a stronger cash flow. This is the kind of debt that is used by the wealthy. Their assets provide them with a strong cash flow which qualifies them to take on more debt. The new debt is not used to acquire additional liabilities but is instead used to leverage the current cash flow. This is done by either making current assets yield higher returns or by acquiring additional assets. This process is also self-reinforcing, while simultaneously creating a positive spiral instead of a horrible one. Core Feature 3. Maximize expenses and minimize income. When Robert was 9 years old, he was working for his rich dad, mowing lawns. Robert made 10 cents per hour doing this work. One day Robert asked his rich dad for a raise. Instead of raising or even discussing the salary, Rich Dad removed it altogether. The reason was that Rich Dad did not want Robert to get addicted to earning an hourly wage. He quoted,
"Paying people to do work is training them to think like employees."
"What does an employee think like?" is naturally the question that is triggered. An employee mindset is one that believes that in order to get ahead financially, you must maximize your income through your salary and then live frugally by minimizing expenses. However, Robert's rich dad argues just the opposite. He says that you shouldn't aim to maximize your income and that you should maximize your expenses instead. Before you turn this video off in disbelief, allow us to explain. The first part about minimizing income stresses how you should not become dependent on a salary. You should have your business reinvest all the surplus capital and minimize the personal income withdrawn. The second part, maximizing expenses, is also quite counterintuitive, but that's because you might think of the wrong type of expenses. The correct type of expenses that should be maximized are the ones that can help you excel your business. Going to a seminar, buying a book, learning a new skill, hiring more people to do work for you, acquiring new assets. These are all expenses that eventually will allow you to get ahead of the rat race. As Rich Dad puts it,
most people eventually lose their money and go broke because they continue to think like a poor person, seeking high income and low expenses. If you never make that switch in your head, you'll be stuck trying to live as cheap and frugal as possible, to make up for your fear of losing money. When you understand why a rich person would want high expenses and low income, you will begin to see that there's another side of that coin.
Core Feature 4. Acquire the 3 E's. Rich Dad believed that in order to become a successful investor and businessman, you would need to achieve 3 items: education, experience, and excess cash. Opportunities are always present and constantly available for the taking, most of us just cannot identify them. This brings us to the first E, education. This one is very straightforward, but nevertheless essential. Study surface-level things about business like how they operate, the dynamic within different industries, and how to read financial statements. Without this basic education, you will be guessing and produce inconsistent results. Now let's talk about the second E. Experience. Whether direct or indirect, try to gain as much experience in the field of business. Rich Dad used to put down a blank financial statement in front of his son and Robert and ask them to fill in the asset column with something. His philosophy was,
the best way to get experience in business is to create your own.
He didn't care much about what the business did or if it even had validity. Just the act of creating and running a business was enough to get the boys aligned with his bigger picture. Failure was almost expected, but the ability to adjust and create something else was the real personality trait that Rich Dad wanted to promote. Even if the proposed solution failed as well, one day with grit and determination success would come. According to Rich Dad, the third E, excess cash, doesn't require the same focus as the first two. This is because once you have a solid education and you have gained experience, excess cash will certainly follow suit. This is where the discipline comes in. You must have full control of your assets. Use the cash flow to acquire additional assets and leverage the time and money of others to expedite the creation of wealth. When a person graduates from school, they almost immediately look for a job. Unless educated on the importance of finding opportunities, they practically interview for a spot in the rat race. From this very moment, the negative spiral takes off, turning cash into trash. Think differently and start to arm yourself with the 3 E's. Never miss out on a great opportunity just because it doesn't involve climbing the corporate ladder. Core Feature 5. Start today. This may be a great moment to provide a disclaimer. Not everyone listening to this is prepared to jump off the theoretical cliff and build a parachute on the way down. Many of you will have to keep your normal job for a while in order to keep the lights on and put food on the table for yourself and perhaps for a family. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. These teachings should leave you with the understanding that all extra money, time, and energy should be invested into your own business. No matter how little, an investment is an investment, and it is the perfect start to building your wealth. Create, explore, fail, learn, and repeat. Do not wait. In the long run, after several attempts, failures, and lessons learned, it becomes more and more likely that your next attempt will work out. As Rich Dad puts it,
A business owner does not have to be correct the majority of the time, they only need to get it right once.
However, make sure to consider the worst-case scenarios and build a plan to survive them. The key to success is being able to bounce back from your failures and apply the lessons learned. You must live in order to fight another day. According to Rich Dad,
Most millionaires lose at least 3 companies before they established a winning one.
the average person has never even tried to establish a company, and if they have, they buckled at the first sign of defeat and never tried again. That is why 10% of people control 90% of the money. Before you head off to start building your empire, let's review today's teachings and make sure that you are equipped with the right tools for success. From the top, build your wealth by creating an asset that acquires additional assets. Once you have a working formula, embrace debt like a best friend and use it to leverage your cash flow. Minimize income withdrawn and maximize expenses that promote accelerated growth and ability to seize financial opportunities. You need education, experience, and excess cash. You must only be right once. Start today. We pray that this message has been impactful and informational. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button and be sure to click the notifications bell so that you don't miss out of any of this wonderful information. Peace and blessings to you all.